Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with HistoryThroughCards.com. Hope you're all doing very well today. In this video, I'm going to tell you the story of Artie Wilson, a former Negro League ball player, and what makes him now very interesting is that, he was interesting before this, but last week, Major League Baseball decided to include about 3,400 Negro League stats into Major League Baseball's official stats and what the consequences of this could be. Now, I did find two really interesting articles here that I think you're going to find equally as fascinating as I did. So here we go. This is from the Arizona Daily Star, May 14th, 1949. Chandler edict forces Yanks tribe to swap. Clubs will trade players. Artie Wilson goes to Newark team. Cincinnati. A controversy between the New York Yankees and Cleveland Indians over Negro shortstop Artie Wilson was settled today by Commissioner A.B. Chandler, who gave Wilson to Newark of the International League. Newark is a Yankee farm club. Cleveland had no right to Wilson because of an earlier agreement the player made with New York, Chandler ruled. Chandler also voided a contract between New York and Luis Marquez and gave him to Cleveland. Shortstop Wilson had been playing manager of the Mayaguez club of the Puerto Rican League. This season he has been playing with San Diego of the Pacific Coast League. MacPhail closed deal. In his decision on Wilson, the commissioner said Lee S. MacPhail Jr., farm director of the Yankees, closed a deal with Tom Hayes Jr., president of the Birmingham Black Barons, to purchase Wilson's contract. That was last year. Referring to a telegram between MacPhail and Hayes, the commissioner said, quote, "It is the commissioner's position that the telegram of January 29th, 1949, from Tom Hayes to Lee MacPhail, accepting terms with the Yankees organization for the purchase of the contract of Wilson was a binding contract, and that the Birmingham Black Barons did not thereafter have the right to enter into a deal with the Cleveland club, null and void. Inasmuch as the contract of Arthur Lee Wilson was conveyed by Tom Hayes of the Birmingham Black Barons to the Cleveland club, the contract of Wilson with Cleveland is declared null and void, and the player is awarded to the Newark International League club on the exact terms specified in the original agreement between Hayes and MacPhail. Wilson had agreed to play with a AAA club for a salary of $500 a month. Chandler said he understood later. The commissioner said Wilson apparently changed his mind, quote, by reason of the fact that he had been paid at the rate of $725 per month for the 1948 season with Birmingham, and further by reason of the fact that he felt he should have received a portion of the sales price of his contract, unquote. This is from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, November 16th, 2010. Mentor to a Young Mays hit 400 in Negro Leagues by Matt Strudel, the Washington Post. Artie Wilson, who once hit 400 in baseball's Negro Leagues and mentored the teenage Willie Mays when they played together in Alabama, died October 31 in his home in a retirement facility in Portland, Oregon. He was 90 and had Alzheimer's disease. Mr. Wilson was a speedy 162-pound shortstop who played with the Birmingham Black Barons from 1942 to 1948. He led the Negro American League in batting 2 times, and in 1948 had a robust average of .402. He is considered the last player in a top-level professional league to hit 400. No major leaguer since Ted Williams, who hit .406 for the Boston Red Sox in 1941, has topped the 400 mark since. In his final seasons in Birmingham, Mr. Wilson was a professional tutor to Mr. Mays, who became one of baseball's greatest stars. He was one of the guys that made sure I didn't get in any trouble, Mr. Mays, who first worked with Mr. Wilson at age 16, told the Oregonian newspaper in Portland. Their paths almost crossed again in 1951 during Mr. Wilson's short-lived major league career. He played in 19 games for the New York Giants before being released a month into the season. He was replaced on the roster by Mr. Mays. I didn't mind, Mr. Wilson said in 1991. I kept telling manager Leo DeRocher all that spring that Mr. Mays was going to be the best of all time. He came up and the Giants won the pennant. I went down and got to play every day. It worked out fine for everyone. Before and after his taste of the big leagues, Mr. Wilson had a stellar career in the Pacific Coast League. The PCL was sometimes called the third major league for the quality of its baseball and for its long seasons, which stretched 200 games. Mr. Wilson, who was known as the Birmingham Gentleman, became one of the league's most popular players. He came up to the West Coast only after two major league teams had vied for his talents in 1949. He was playing for the Cleveland Indians' top minor league team in San Diego when the New York Yankees complained that Wilson had previously made a verbal commitment to them. Baseball Commissioner A.B. Happy Chandler voided Mr. Wilson's contract with the Indians, and the Yankees then sold his contract to the Oakland Oaks. Mr. Wilson became Oakland's first black player. His roommate was his double play partner, second baseman Billy Martin, who later played for the Yankees and had a standout career as a manager. Mr. Wilson was a smooth fielder with a strong arm. At the plate, he was a pesky left-handed hitter who slapped the ball to the opposite field. Some teams put three players to the left of second base in an effort to stop him. In 1949, Mr. Wilson led the PCL in batting and stolen bases with a .348 batting average and 47 steals. The next year, he scored 168 runs and collected 264 hits while playing in 196 games for Oakland. After a short stint in the majors, Mr. Wilson moved on to Seattle, Portland, and Sacramento in the PCL, hitting .300 four times. He retired in 1957 and attempted a comeback in 1962. The PCL was just another ball game as far as I was concerned, Mr. Wilson once recalled. It never bothered me being there so long. I was making more money than a lot of the players in the major leagues. All I wanted to do was play baseball. Arthur Lee Wilson was born on October 28, 1920, in Springville, Alabama. As a boy, he taught himself to hit with a rubber ball and a broomstick. He lost the tip of his right thumb while working in a factory, but it never hindered his playing. He settled in Portland in 1955 and was a car dealer for more than 40 years. Mr. Wilson played in old-timers games into his 70s and never tired of speaking of his days in the Negro Leagues, playing alongside such legends as Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, and Cool Papa Bell. Those fellows I played with were giants in the game, he said in 1991. Oh my, could they ever play? I know one thing, if some had played in the majors in their prime, there would be a lot more records than there are now. This was really interesting, and I want to kind of dive into a few different topics here regarding these articles. So, the first thing that I kind of noticed here was how much Wilson was actually making during this time. And he had said that he was making more money with the PCL than he would have in the major leagues. And today people are like, what? Like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But that's what he said. And I wanted to find out if actually that was the case, partially. So I kind of broke this down a little bit. And in 1949, $500 a month was the equivalent of $6,587.14 in 2024 dollars. And he also said that in 1948 he was making about $725 a month. And so a lot of ball players said that they really enjoyed their time with the PCL. And the PCL is, in fact, considered the third major league. And so I wanted to find out how many games the Negro Leagues played during the season and the PCL and baseball. And so the Negro Leagues first off, it's a really fascinating league, and going back to 1920, and then prior to that, you have the pre Negro Leagues. That time in baseball history is again really fascinating. What happened prior to that with black ball players and Cuban ball players as well. The Negro Leagues, they only had a 60 game season. And so that's one of the reasons why you did see a lot of Negro League ball players. They interchanged with other leagues, specifically the Cuban League, the Puerto Rican League, and a few others as well. And they played up in Canada. So a lot of these guys were playing year round. But what's really interesting about this too is that the Major League Baseball, when they actually had all their Negro League stats included into the official Major League Baseball stats, they're not including other leagues. They're just including the Negro Leagues as far as it looks. The PCL, which again considered a third league, they had a season between 200 and 220 games per year. And again, a lot of these players just wanted to play baseball. So it had, great weather out there and sunshine, and I'm sure pina coladas all over the place, right? I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here. A Major League Baseball season prior to 1961 was 154 games, and the American League expanded that to 162 in 1961, followed by the National League in 1962. This kind of gets me to the official stats here that Major League Baseball is now including into, the Negro Leagues into Major League Baseball. So there's a lot of statistics that are missing from the Negro Leagues. We don't really have complete games here, unlike, say, Major League Baseball, where you have box scores. So there are some newspapers, black newspapers, that did follow a lot of these teams. I think maybe daily, but I'm not even sure about that. So the committee that studied the Negro League stats to include them, uh, they are very well aware that this is an ongoing issue, that you have missing entities here, and so that obviously can change over time if they find more information. But to include little bits and pieces here, I'm not sure again if this is the right thing to do at the time. For a lot of people, it seems the right thing to do because Major League Baseball really they excluded a lot of these ball players, which again was the wrong thing to do, obviously. But you have to look at it too in the times in which these players were living, these people were living, and the culture. Now, I always say too is that if you had a flying time traveling DeLorean and went back to 1941 and it just dropped you off, everything would be so foreign and so alien. How would you drive a car? How would you write out a check, do simple things that we kind of take for granted today? In 1941, it would essentially be so foreign to you and I. Could you really function? And the thoughts of the time as well, completely different from today. We don't think like a person who was from 1941 today, or even 1923, and a lot of that is actually good, but and some of it is not. So um, people, their perceptions of everything changes over time, and it can be a slow process, as we've seen with Martin Luther King. And even today, his "I Have a Dream" speech is really not fulfilled as far as I'm concerned. I I never really considered the color of somebody's skin. It was more what their intent is, because you can't really do anything about the color of your skin. For me, it shouldn't be important, and it never really was. Growing up, I grew up a disabled kid, so I had a lot more serious problems than the color of somebody's skin or what religion they were. And so I had to kind of prioritize what was more important. And if, for me, it still doesn't matter what color of skin you have. If you're a good person, you're a good person. If you're a bad person, you're a bad person. And, like I kind of see things in black and white, and I see things as a disabled guy. So for me, the level of play here, I guess for even Major League Baseball, it doesn't matter. So we don't really know exactly what the level of play, the high caliber level of play, if there was, uh, what the differences are between the major leagues and the Negro leagues, or even the Pacific Coast League. The Pacific Coast League, you would probably expect to see higher batting averages just because those guys got to play longer, or if you would see higher batting averages in the Negro leagues because they only had a 60-game season, and some teams folded, week to week. So it really depended, I think, on the league, how much money the league was getting. You had a couple of Negro League teams actually play in major league stadiums in the mid to late 1940s, and they were outselling the Major League Baseball. And that's, again, they were being leased. So a lot of these teams were actually flushed with cash, but that wasn't universal throughout the Negro National League and Negro American League. And I believe one of those leagues actually folded, and they were reformed again. So it's a really fascinating league, and I'm actually really curious now, um, because Wilson's 1948 stat is now above Ted Williams' 406 officially. So does that mean that Ted Williams his stat no longer really matter? Well, of course it does. Does that mean that Wilson's stat is superior? These leagues are different. They're completely different. The thing that we don't know is just how different what the play was. Was it at the same caliber here? And we don't know that because we're not from the 1940s. I'm sure there are people who are alive from the 1940s, but they would be like in their 90s, right? So, or late 90s, in fact. So we can only kind of look at this through a lens of statistics, and maybe there is some film footage out there, which that would be awesome too. I would have loved to have seen some film footage of the Negro League World Series, but I thought this was really interesting, and it's a hot topic right now, adding Negro League stats officially to Major League Baseball. And Wilson, he actually does have quite a number of cards that I was not aware of, in fact. And so he's got a 1949 Remar Bread card, and he's on the Oakland Oaks. And the Oakland Oaks of the late 1940s is a really interesting um, team because they have so many stars, past and future major leaguers. And they also had Casey Stengel as a manager. And when the Yankees saw that he won at least one championship, and I think he went to another one, they knew right away that they wanted Casey Stengel to manage the Yankees, and that's that kind of made Casey Stengel a Hall of Famer actually. And then Wilson also has a 1948-49 Teros. I hope I'm spelling that or pronouncing that correctly. Number 49. There's actually two variations of that card. The other one is number 69, which I think is actually a nicer looking card. And then he's got a 1949 Haig's Dairy. I've seen a lot of Haig's Dairy. They're a little bit larger, kind of neat, to tell you the truth. I think they're black backed. And then he's got a 1950 Remar Bread, and then a 1951 Torteros, which is in color, and a 1952 Mother's Cookies, number 40, and a 1956 Seattle Popcorn. Again, I've never seen any of these cards, but I do know from what I've seen online, so I've never seen them in person, but the ones that I've seen online are actually quite expensive. Now, I don't know if that expense is due to the fact what happened last week with the official statistics of the Negro Leagues. Um, but you really can't compare stats between Major League Baseball and the Negro Leagues. I don't think it's very fair to either. Not yet, anyway, because there's so little information that we actually do have. We don't have a complete picture of game to game stats like we do with the American League and National League. So, guys, I thought this would be really interesting. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this topic, either Wilson or the statistics portion. Again, it's a kind of a heated topic, especially over at Net 54. Uh, those guys are having some fun over there. But again, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. And again, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say on this. And if you have any of Wilson's cards, let me know what you have because I'd love to hear. So, in another video, I will see you later. Bye.